The scene opens inside Hanoi's National Convention Center, where a quiet formality fills the air. Delegates from around the world sit arranged in precise rows, their posture firm, their expressions composed. The atmosphere reflects the seriousness of the moment. More than 60 countries are gathered here to sign what is now being described as a landmark treaty, one aimed at confronting a danger that does not recognize borders, geography, or sovereignty. A danger that exists in invisible networks, behind screens, in encrypted messages, and in the coded shadows of the digital age. A danger known simply as cybercrime. This is the signing of the United Nations' first global treaty designed to tackle cybercrime, and the symbolism of holding this event in Hanoi is not lost on observers. Vietnam has invested heavily in recent years to strengthen digital governance and cybersecurity. Hosting this ceremony positions it not only as a participant, but as a nation seeking to shape the international landscape of emerging digital law. United Nations Secretary-General António Guterres is seen listening intently during the opening remarks. His expression shows a familiarity with the gravity of global treaties and an understanding that the world is entering a new phase where conflict and crime increasingly happen without physical confrontation. When he steps toward the stage, cameras click rapidly. His presence underscores that this moment is not merely procedural, it is historical. Vietnamese President Luong Cuong also steps forward. His tone is measured and steady as he speaks to the assembled delegates. He emphasizes that Vietnam hosting and becoming the first nation to sign the treaty is a demonstration of commitment. He says Vietnam is showing, in his words, firm commitment to respecting the rule of law and fully fulfilling our international obligations. His statement is clear. Vietnam wants to be seen not only as a member of the international community, but as a leader within it. The signing process itself unfolds with careful choreography. Delegates approach the stage one by one. Chile signs, then China, then Congo. Each signature symbolizes an expanding coalition. Each handshake reflects not merely agreement, but shared concern. Cybercrime today spans everything from child exploitation and identity theft to online scams, money laundering, and ransomware attacks that can cripple entire hospitals, power grids, and national institutions. For many countries, it is no longer just a technological issue. It is a matter of security, sovereignty, and the protection of citizens. And yet what makes this treaty particularly notable is not only the number of countries signing it, but also the fact that opposition does not come from rival governments, but from an unusual alliance of global technology companies, human rights organizations, and digital freedom advocates. They argue that elements of the treaty may give governments too much authority to access digital communications, raising concerns about increased surveillance, censorship, and the targeting of political dissidents under the guise of combating crime. To them, the question is not whether cybercrime should be addressed. Everyone agrees that it must be, but how to strike the balance between protecting security and protecting civil liberties. This concern is anticipated in the speeches. António Guterres addresses it directly. He explains that the treaty recognizes crimes such as the non-consensual sharing of intimate images, calling it a growing abuse in the digital age that can ruin lives in seconds. He stresses that victims of such crimes must have access to remedies, compensation, and the removal of harmful content. Then he clarifies that the treaty cannot be used as a tool of broad digital surveillance. He states clearly that it is designed for criminal investigations, not for monitoring citizens or controlling political expression. These remarks are not simply protocol. They are intentional. They are meant to reassure. They are meant to demonstrate that the treaty's purpose is protection, not control. Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh reinforces the significance of the moment by noting that 65 countries have already signed, calling it evidence of growing trust in Vietnam's diplomatic leadership. His tone conveys national pride, but also a sense of responsibility. Vietnam's evolving global role is being watched closely both regionally and internationally. Inside the hall, the delegates' attention remains fixed. They understand that cybercrime is not abstract. It affects real people in real situations every day. A grandmother losing her savings to an online scam, a child targeted through social media, a hospital's emergency system frozen by ransomware, a journalist tracked and silenced through digital intrusion. These are not hypothetical concerns. They are lived realities across continents. The voice of the treaty's supporters emphasises unity. Cybercrime, they argue, cannot be fought by any one nation. Criminal networks are global. Their servers are global. Their transactions move from continent to continent in fractions of a second. Without coordination, law enforcement is left chasing shadows. However, this same cross-border cooperation, sharing data, communications, and digital pathways is exactly where critics raise their voices. Technology companies that manage encrypted platforms argue that governments may use this treaty as justification to weaken or bypass encryption systems. Human rights groups warn that countries with a history of suppressing dissent could use new investigative powers not just to pursue criminals, but to track political opponents or journalists. They fear that under the banner of security, freedom may become collateral damage. The hall remains calm, but behind the diplomatic language lies a debate unfolding across the world. It is a debate between safety and privacy, between national security and personal freedom, between the right to protection and the right to dissent. And the truth is, the digital world has made that balance harder to maintain. Today's signing is described by António Guterres as only the beginning. He acknowledges that laws, systems, and oversight must continue evolving. The treaty itself will require constant review and adaptation. Technology evolves quickly, criminals evolve faster. It is also widely recognized that capacity gaps remain. Many developing countries lack the tools, trained personnel, and infrastructure to investigate digital crimes effectively. President Luong spoke to this directly, calling for international cooperation in training, resources, technical assistance, and technology transfer. In other words, agreeing to work together is only the first step. The capacity to act must follow. As the ceremony continues, a delegate from Chile signs the treaty, followed by delegates from China and Congo. Each signature carries its own political story. Some are motivated by rising cyber attacks on state institutions, some by concerns over child exploitation online, some by financial fraud targeting citizens, others by expanding digital economies vulnerable to disruption. No matter the reason, their participation adds to the sense of global urgency. The camera shows António Guterres walking with Vietnam's national president Tran Thanh Man at the National Assembly. Their handshake reflects diplomatic continuity, relationships built, relationships maintained. In private meetings, discussions are expected to include not only the treaty itself, but broader digital governance priorities. Issues like cross-border data sharing, the rise of artificial intelligence, and the increasing vulnerability of national infrastructure to digital attack are all part of the broader conversation. The future of global security is no longer defined solely by armies, borders, or the physical world. It is increasingly defined by digital networks. The treaty acknowledges that the digital age has erased traditional borders, yet legal and law enforcement systems still operate within them. Closing this gap is the challenge ahead, and yet questions remain. Will the treaty be implemented fairly? Will safeguards be upheld? Will governments resist the temptation to use new powers beyond their intended purpose? Will human rights monitoring mechanisms be strong enough? Will citizens have legal recourse if their privacy is unjustly violated? These are not small questions. They will determine whether this treaty is remembered as a groundbreaking milestone or as a turning point toward digital overreach. As the signing ceremony concludes, the room shifts into a press conference. Journalists raise questions about enforcement, oversight, and next steps. António Guterres reaffirms that the treaty is not a surveillance tool. President Luong speaks again of Vietnam's commitment to international responsibility. The message is repeated: cooperation, trust, shared security. Outside the hall, Hanoi continues with its usual rhythm. Motorbikes weave through streets, markets move with everyday life. Yet inside diplomatic and legal institutions, a new chapter of digital governance is beginning. The global community has taken a significant step. Whether it leads to more protection or more control will depend not only on the text of the treaty, but on the will and responsibility of each state that has signed it. The challenge of cybercrime will not disappear. It will continue to evolve. The question now is whether the world can evolve alongside it without compromising the values it seeks to defend.